As campaign for the 2023 presidential election kicks off, it is important that voters are aware of the pedigree of each of the presidential candidates to enable them to make an informed choice of who is more capable to bring Nigeria out of the woods. The PPQI, developed by the Labour Business School, is the tool designed specifically for that purpose. If you have not watched the PPQI videos, we urge you to search for it on this page so that you can follow up with the background and the structure of the PPQI. Let us begin this video by providing you a brief background of the index used in preparing this PPQI for these candidates. Now, we deliberately did not include health and age indicators because health and age indicators, we believe, are more natural, can happen to anybody. And so we are leaving the voters to make a decision on whether health and age will be important for them as they make that decision on who to vote for in the coming election. Let us start with Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, in terms of how his pedigree, how his profile is compared with the problems that the World Bank identified as a critical problem for Nigeria 2021. In 2021, they developed a report called the Nigeria Overview. In that overview, they presented 10 critical problems that Nigeria needs to solve if Nigeria must transit from a developing nation to a developed nation. So in this video, we are going to be matching each presidential candidate CV generated from Wikipedia against the PPQI index. Then at the end of the day, we will score them and provide you that opportunity to see how they score and to enable you make a decision on who is more prepared, who is more competent based on their profile and pedigree. Peter Obi. The first problem that Nigeria needs to solve is the problem of reduction of dependency on oil or economic diversification. Now, what is the pedigree of the president that is more fit, more capable, more prepared to solve this problem of economic diversification? That person must have a strong background in international relations and a good grasp of geopolitical dynamics. Now, how does Peter Obi match in terms of his CV with the PPQI index? Now, we know that Peter Obi has pursued academic courses on international relations and geopolitics based on his business courses, executive courses that he attended at Kellogg's International School, Kellogg Business School, Harvard Business School, and other international schools and academic institutions, even in Nigeria, to that effect. But we know that he lacks practical or official experience in terms of day-to-day dealing with issues that have to do with international relations. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 5% in that question, 5% out of 10%. Now, the second problem that Nigeria have is reduction of unemployment. Who is more fit to do this, to solve this problem for Nigeria? That person must have 20 years of private or public sector experience with above 1,000 jobs in his or her portfolio. How does Peter Obi match? Now, we know that Peter Obi was sometimes the chairman of not just one bank, chairman of Fidelity Bank, that is, readily available to us in the course of our research, among other banks. And also, we know that he also have managed conglomerates, business interests in shopping mall, for instance. Next Shopping Mall was one of his business entity that he has managed, and a combination of all these his ventures actually puts him in that category of someone that has been able to create over 1,000 jobs, because he must have been able to employ over 1,000 persons combined in those banks and in those other business interests. So to that extent, the PPQI scores him 8%. The third problem is insufficient infrastructure or infrastructural deficit. Who is going to be more capable to address this problem? Now, the person must possess average of 3 business interests related to construction, logistics, or in similar sector with a spread across the 3 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Now, how does P2B match? Now, P2B have verifiable business interests in alcohol, in banking, and in other sectors spanning across the country. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 8% out of 10%. The fourth problem is the problem of insecurity, social unrest. We see this happening everywhere. Now, the person that should be able to solve this problem of insecurity for Nigeria must have demonstrable firmness, unbiasedness, and liberal-mindedness with history of military combativeness. Now, how does P2B match? We know that P2B is liberally minded, but of course, he lacks that military combativeness. And so the PPQI scores him 6%. The fifth problem is high inflation, high cost of living. What is the pedigree of the president that will be able to solve this problem of high inflation, high cost of living? The person must possess over 20 years of executive experience in public service, state or at the national level, or must have been in the private sector managing a conglomerate. How does P2B match? He have over 20 years in executive positions based on his public office as a governor of Anambra State and his chairmanship of business interests across the country in different sectors. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 8%. The sixth problem is reduction of poverty. Who is more equipped to reduce poverty in Nigeria? The person must have verifiable understanding of Human Capacity Development Index and evidence of working relationships with development partners. How does P2B match? Now, we know that P2B have good record of philanthropic donations to human capacity development related programs, and he also have a good grasp of development partners because he has worked in that space in the course of his donations and all that. So to that extent, the PPQI scores him 8%. The seventh problem is the problem of public finance management. How does P2B match? Or first, what is the pedigree required? Now, the pedigree is that president must have demonstrable prudence and accountability in public and private life or in his previous assignment or portfolios. So how does P2B match? P2B, we are aware, have evidence of prudent management of resources, even in the public sector, with an example of the handover of assets to the Anambra State government. And it's also in the news that he never left any form of debt to the Anambra State government. In fact, he handed over a huge sum of money. And also, we also know, based on his antecedents in the private sector, that his private businesses has also thrived very well. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 8%. The next problem is the problem of governance issues, corruption, the problem of corruption. This has been one of the key problems that we have faced in Nigeria, militating against the development of the country. So what is the pedigree of the person that is going to be capable to solving this problem for Nigeria? The person must have a demonstrable flair, experience in technology and Nigerian civil service rules. How does P2B match? We know that P2B have good knowledge of technology, whether personally at a very close range, we can't verify. But we also know that he have a good civil service governance rules awareness, because he has played in that space. He has been a governor, and so to that extent, the PPQI scores him 7%. The ninth problem is the problem of lack of enduring and effective institutions. Lack of enduring and effective institutions. What is the pedigree required of the next president to be able to solve this problem? The person must have exemplary leadership without micromanagement or control of colleagues or subordinates. How does P2B match? Now, we have it on good authority that to a large extent, P2B has demonstrated a projected exemplary leadership, but he lacks that evidentiary network of personal or practical associates What we mean by that is we have not seen enough evidence to show that people from his political sector, political space, that he has grown or groomed for many years, still, following through with him, or people that he also groomed in the private sector that has actually come out to, demonstrate their support and love for him. And so, to that extent, the PPQI gives him 6% out of 10%. The last problem and the 10th problem is the problem of regional inequities. We see this all around us by the manifestation of different ethnic groupings, manifestation of different militant groupings, and all that. So what is the pedigree required for a president that will be able to solve this problem? The person must be detribalized. It must be a detribalized Nigeria, and it must be able to demonstrate capacity in designing and implementing organizational welfare programs, because it is important that the person understand the import of welfare to cushion the agitations of marginalization and all that. So how does P2B match with this pedigree? We know that P2B is a detribalized person from a distance, and we also know that he has good knowledge of welfare economics because he takes part in philanthropic gestures, and to that extent the PPQI scores him 7%. Now this score is based on 100% because each of the problem or the question, as the case may be, goes for 10%. And so when we total all the scores for Peter Obi, we arrived at the total score, PPQI total score of 71%. So Peter Obi have 71% preparedness, pedigree, to be able to solve the problems of Nigeria. So he's a viable candidate. Now, let's go to the next candidate. Let's see how the next candidate's profile and pedigree also match with the PPQI. So let's start again with Bola Tinubu, the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress. Now, we'll go as we did in the case of Peter Obi, one problem, the pedigree, and then the PPQI CV match of Bola Tinubu. So the first problem is reduction of dependency on oil, economic diversification. The pedigree as well is that he must have a strong background in international relations and a good grasp of geopolitical dynamics. Now, how does Bola Tinubu match? We know that Bola have academic or practical background. We don't have that information that Bola have academic or practical background in international relations, except for his time at NADECO. We know that he was a key player in the NADECO era, where he mostly sponsored the activities of NADECO. But in terms of dealing with countries, he wasn't the one that was actually taking those responsibilities. And so the PPQI scores him 2% because he does not have that background, academic background, and we could not also find any practical experience in issues of international relations. And so the PPQI scores him 2%. The next problem is the problem of reduction of unemployment. How does Bola Tinubu match? First, let's look at the pedigree that is expected of him. Now, the president that will be able to solve this problem must have 20 years of private or public sector experience with above 1,000 jobs in his portfolio. So how does Bola Tinubu match? Now, we know that Bola Tinubu have so much entrepreneurial capabilities. He has entrepreneurial ventures that he has initiated and he has managed. And of course, he was also one-time governor of Lagos State. All this put together puts him in that category of having over 20 years experience in terms of creating jobs. Why we cannot measure the amount of jobs he has created, because the business that he's into, technology essentially, it's not that employs so much staff. But of course, it puts him in that category of people that is able to solve this problem. And so the PPQI scores him 7%. The next problem is the problem of insufficient infrastructure or infrastructural deficit. Now, the pedigree required is that the person must have average of 3 business interests related to construction, logistics, or in similar sectors with a spread across the 3 geopolitical zones of Nigeria. How does Bola match? We know that Bola Tinubu have business interests in logistics and ICT in particular. And so the PPQI scores him 5%. The fourth problem is the problem of insecurity, social unrest. What is the pedigree? The person must have demonstrable firmness, unbiasedness, and liberal-mindedness with history of military combativeness. Now we know that Bola Tinubu is also liberally minded, but he lacks that military combativeness. We also see that amongst his friends, but he lacks that military combativeness, and so the PPQI scores him 6% as well. The fifth problem is the problem of high inflation, high cost of living. What is the pedigree required? The person must have over 20 years of executive experience in public service, state or national, or managing a private conglomerate. So how does Bola Tinubu match? His 8 years governorship of Lagos State is a wonderful experience, and of course he has been in the private sector for a very long time, ranging from his time in abroad in the United States in particular and other countries of the world, and of course in Nigeria. And so the PPQI scores him 7%. The sixth problem is a problem of reduction of poverty. Now, this is not new to us because as it is, Nigeria is seen to be the poverty capital of the world. So what is the pedigree required of the person that should be able to solve this problem for Nigeria and Nigerians? The person must have verifiable understanding of Human Capacity Development Index and evidence of working relationship with development partners. So how does Bola Tinubu match? Now, we know that Bola Tinubu have a high network of associates, have low workers turnover, but poor evidence of working with development partners. And so he is very, very qualified to solve this problem, and the PPQI gives him 8% out of 10%. The seventh problem is the problem of public finance management. What is the pedigree required? The person must have demonstrable prudence and accountability in public and private life or previous portfolios. So how does Bola Tinubu match with the PPQI? Now, we know that there is an increased accountability because he has been able to manage his business interest to the best of our knowledge. None of his businesses has failed. Neither is he bankrupt in any form or shape. But in terms of his public life, in terms of his public portfolios, he falls very short in that because there are a lot of issues, court cases that surrounds him, a lot of allegations, though most of them are not proven. But the PPQI scores him 5%. Now, the eighth problem is the problem of governance issues or corruption. So, what is the pedigree required of the president that will be able to solve this problem? That president must have demonstrable flair, experience in technology, and Nigerian civil service rules or laws. How does Bola Tinubu match with the PPQI? Now, Bola Tinubu's overall experience in managing technology ventures is also commendable because, you know, starting a business that has to do with technology gives you some insight and some knowledge about the possibilities that technology can drive. But we know that from the practical front, the practical perspective, he doesn't really have that experience. Yes, he has people working for him, but personally, he don't have that personal touch, personal understanding. Of course, not everybody will have personal knowledge about technology, but we know he has good knowledge of civil service rules because his time as governor of Lagos State, he was able to achieve some wonderful initiatives and developmental strides. And so the PPQI scores him 7% out of 10%. The ninth problem is the problem of lack of enduring and effective institutions. Now, what is the pedigree required to solve this problem? The president must have exemplary leadership without micromanagement or control of colleagues or subordinates. So how does Bola match? Now, this is a very strong point for Bola Tinubu because we know he has history of long relationship with personal and practical associates. Those, most of them are seen to be frosty, but of course he can also not take that away from politicians. And so the PPQI scores him 6%. Now, the 10th problem is the problem of regional inequities, which gives rise to militancy, marginalization campaigns, and others. Even agitations to the extreme in terms of Boko Haram and other militant groupings across the country. So what is the pedigree required of the person that will be able to solve this problem for Nigeria? The person must be a detribalized Nigerian and must demonstrate capacity in designing and implementing organizational welfare programs. So how does Bola Tinubu match? Yes, Bola Tinubu is a detribalized Nigeria that we know because his relationship is network cut across all the nooks and crannies of Nigeria. He has, to a large extent, a good grasp of welfare economies because he has also been in government. He has also initiated some programs that are developmental in nature, and to that extent, the PPQI scores him 7%. So, on the average, the total score, PPQI score for Bola Tinubu is 60%. The next candidate that we are going to quickly look at in this video is the person of Atiku Abubakar, the candidate for the People's Democratic Party. So again, we're going to run through each of those problems. Then we look at the established pedigree required for a president that will be able to solve these problems. Then we match those pedigree with the pedigree or profile of Atiku Abubakar. So let's go with the first one. The problem of reduction of dependency on oil or economic diversification. How does Atiku Abubakar match? Or first, what is the pedigree required? Now, the president must have a strong background in international relations and a good grasp of geopolitical dynamics. So how does Atiku Abubakar match? 8 years as vice president enhances his understanding of international relations and geopolitics. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 8%. The second problem is the problem of reduction of unemployment. So what is the pedigree required? 20 years of private or public sector experience with above 1,000 jobs in his portfolio. How does Atiku Abubakar match? We have evidence of his ownership of chains of businesses, creating a combination of over 1,000 jobs, whether it's in the microfinance industry, the academic industry, in the logistics sector as well. He has been able to have business interests that is capable of creating over 1,000 jobs. The third problem is the problem of insufficient infrastructure or infrastructural deficit. What is the pedigree required? Average of 3 business interests related to construction, logistics, or in a similar sector with a spread across the 3 geopolitical zones. How does Atiku Abubakar match? We have evidence of his ownership of business interests in academics, logistics, and in other sectors spanning across the country, and to that extent, the PPQI score, scores him 8%. The fourth problem is the problem of insecurity, social unrest. What is the pedigree required of the president that will be able to solve this problem? The president must have been able to demonstrate firmness, unbiasedness, and liberal-mindedness with history of history of military combativeness. How does Atiku Abubakar match? Yes, we know that Atiku Abubakar is liberally minded, but he lacks that military combativeness, and so the PPQI scores him 6%. The problem of high inflation, high cost of living. What is the pedigree required? The person must have over 20 years of executive experience in public service, state or national, or management of a private conglomerate. How does Atiku Abubakar match? Yeah, we know that he has public and private sector experience, culminating over 20 years experience creating jobs and managing a workforce. And so to that extent, the PPQI scores him 8%. The sixth problem is the problem of reduction of poverty. Now, the person must have verifiable understanding of Human Capacity Development Index and evidence of working relationship with development partners. How does Atiku Abubakar match with this pedigree? We have a very low evidence of his relationship with development partners, but the academic investment that he has made proves to a large extent his understanding of human capacity development. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 7%. The seventh problem is a problem of public finance management. The pedigree required is that the person must have demonstrable prudence and accountability in public and private life or previous portfolios. How does Atiku Abubakar match? Yeah, we can say from the private sector perspective that he has demonstrated some level of prudence in his management of his private ventures, because none of them has also failed. Neither is he bankrupt. But we have poor evidence of his public prudence. There have been a lot of accusations and allegations, but again, from what he has come out to claim is that nobody has indicted him. He has never been indicted. And he has challenged everybody that have evidence against him to show them forth. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 5%. The eighth problem is the problem of governance issues or corruption. What is the pedigree required? Demonstrable flair, experience in technology, and Nigerian civil service rules. How does Atiku Abubakar match? We have a very poor evidence of his practical knowledge of technology. Though we know he has aides that works with him in terms of managing social media and all that. But we also know he has good understanding of civil service rules because he has been in that space for a long time. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 7%. The ninth problem is the problem of lack of enduring and effective institutions. What is the pedigree required? Exemplary leadership without micromanagement or control of colleagues and subordinates. How does it match? We have evidence of sustained personal and political relationships going back many years. We have also witnessed little or no conflict with most of those associates. And to that extent, the PPQI scores him 7%. The 10th and the final problem is the problem of regional inequities. What is the pedigree required? It requires someone that is a detribalized personality and that demonstrates capacity in designing and implementing organizational welfare programs. How does Atiku Abubakar match? Yes, we can say for a fact that Atiku Abubakar is a detribalized Nigerian, but we have a poor evidence of his support of welfare economics. It's largely seen as an aristocrat. To that extent, the PPQI scores him 5%. Now, this is the scoring that we have for each of these candidates. Join us in the next video where we will now show you in comparison how these candidates stand and their readiness in terms of their profile and pedigree to be able to solve the problems of Nigeria. Until then, we'll see you again. Don't forget to share your comments in the comment section.